basic matrix operations. A matrix is a rectangular arrangement of numbers. So this is an example of what a matrix may look like. There's the rectangular arrangement of numbers. A matrix has what we call dimensions, right? And that's basically the number of rows and columns. So if you look at this matrix here, you've got one row across the top, the 1 and the 2, that forms one row, and then another row would be where the 3 and the 4 are. So it's got 2 rows, and then it's got 2 columns. 1 and 3 form column 1, and then 2 and 4 will form column 2. So this matrix has dimensions 2 by 2. So this first 2 is the rows, and the second 2 is the amount of columns. Now, the numbers inside the matrix, the 1, the 2, the 3, and the 4, those are what we call elements. So this matrix has 2 rows, 2 columns, that's the dimensions. It's a rectangular arrangement of numbers, and those numbers inside are the elements. And then, real quickly, if 2 matrices are equal, they have to have the same amount, but they have to have the same dimensions, and the elements inside must be the same. So, for example, if I have matrix 2, 3, 4, 5 is equal to matrix 2, 3, 4, 5. These two are obvious that they're equal matrices. They have the same amount of rows and columns, and the elements are the same. If you had matrix 1, 2, 3, 4 is equal to 5, 6, 7, 8, this would not be true. They are not equal because they have the same dimensions, but the elements are different. All right, so that's your basics of what a matrix is. So now we're going to add and subtract 2 matrices. So to do that, you just simply add or subtract corresponding elements. Corresponding elements. You can add or subtract matrices only if they have the same dimensions. So this, you have matrix, we'll call this one matrix A, and this is matrix B. And we can add these 2 matrices together. If you look, they have the same dimensions. This is a 2 by 2. It's got 2 rows, and it has 2 columns. Matrix B is also a 2 by 2. It's got 2 rows, and there are 2 columns as well. Okay, so they have the same dimensions. We can add them together. And then how do you add them together? Well, you look for corresponding elements. For example, the A and the E, they're both in the first row and then the first column. Or you could say they're both in the top left corner. So they are corresponding elements. So you can add them together. And that's A plus E. The B and the F, these are corresponding elements. They are in the top right corner. So you can add them together. You've got C and G, those correspond. So you can add them together. And then last you've got D and H. They are corresponding elements, so they can be added together. The same is also true with subtraction. Same dimensions, just subtract corresponding elements. A and E, B and F, C and G, and then D and H are corresponding. You can subtract. So here's a couple of examples of adding and subtracting matrices. If you look at the first one here, you've got a matrix with elements 6, -2, 1, and 3, and we're going to subtract matrix with elements 3 and 2. Now, first thing you want to do is check the dimensions. So this first one has 2 rows, row 1 and row 2, and it has 2 columns. So this is a 2 by 2, that's the dimensions. And then the second one over here has 2 rows. Now a row can have 1 element in it, just such as 3, that's still a row, and then the 2 is still a row. And it has 1 column, so it's a 2 by 1. So are the dimensions the same? No, they're not. So you cannot subtract this, so this would have no solution. The next example, we have a matrix with 3 rows and 2 columns. So here's row 1, row 2, row 3. And this would be column 1 and column 2. So it's a 3 by 2. If you look at the other matrix, it is also a 3 by 2. So these two have the same dimensions, we can add them together. So let's go ahead and do that. And remember, when we add, we're just going to add corresponding elements. And the answer is also going to be a 3 by 2 matrix. So it's going to have 3 rows and 2 columns. This negative 2 is in row 1, column 1. Just take note of its position. And we're going to add the element that's in row 1, column 1. So that would be the 1. So what's negative 2 plus 1? That gives you negative 1. In row 1, column 2, you have a 1. And over here in row 1, column 2, we have a negative 4. Those are corresponding elements, so we'll add them together. 1 plus negative 4 gives you negative 3. Go to row 2. In row 2, column 1, we have a 0. That corresponds with, in row 2, column 1 of the other matrix, a negative 2. 0 plus negative 2 is negative 2. If we look at row 2, column 2, we have a 3. With the other matrix, row 2, column 2, there's a 9. So 3 plus 9 gives us 12. Then go to row 3, column 1, you have a 7. So in row 3, column 1 of the other matrix, we have a 1. So 7 plus 1 is 8. And then last, in row 3, column 2, we have a 6. And then in row 3, column 2, we have a 5. So 6 plus 5 gives me 11. So my answer when I added these two matrices together was this new matrix right here. So that is our solution. So you can add or subtract matrices as long as they have the same dimensions. And you'll just add or subtract the corresponding elements. All right, let's add these two together. First, you need to check the dimensions. We've got a 2 by 2, 2 by 2, row 1, row 2, column 1, column 2. Make sure you understand where the rows and columns are. That's going to be helpful when we start to multiply matrices, which will be another lesson. But these two have the same dimensions. We will add them together. My answer is going to be a 2 by 2. So 3 corresponds with negative 1. So 3 plus negative 1 will give me 2. Then I've got 0. It corresponds with 4. Those are in the top right corner. 0 plus 4 is 4. And then the negative 5 corresponds with 2. They are both in the bottom left corner. So negative 5 plus 2 is negative 3. And then finally we've got negative 1 plus 0, which is negative 1. And there's my solution right there. Right? Down here we have a subtraction problem. Check the dimensions first. Make sure they are the same. This has got 3 rows and 2 columns. 3 rows and 2 columns. So corresponding elements, we have 7 and negative 2. 7 minus a negative 2. Remember, when you have minus minus, it becomes plus. So that would be 7 plus 2, which would give me 9. And you just have to be careful on the signs. The 4 and the 5 correspond. 4 minus 5 is negative 1. And then we've got 0 and 3. So 0 minus 3 is negative 3. And then we have negative 2 and negative 10. Remember, negative 2 minus negative 10. Minus minus is plus. So negative 2 plus 10 gives you 8. And then negative 1 and negative 3 correspond. Negative 1 minus negative 3, again, minus minus is plus. Negative 1 plus 3 gives you 2. And then 6 and 1 correspond as well. 6 minus 1 gives you 5. Right? So that is how you add and subtract two matrices together. It's not that difficult. Just make sure you check the dimensions and you can tell that they are the same.